warm welcome to episode 28 of Tea, Biscuits and Doll's House Chatter. Now don't worry, you are watching a Tea and Biscuits, not a shop episode, but do you remember my original plans for the shop included some painted old-fashioned signs at each side of the shop. Now when it came to it I couldn't do them because Matt's little craft robo machine, which was going to create the templates for me, actually conked out. But he now has a lovely brand new machine and it's a larger model than the older one. And he's going to create some templates for me so I can finally get those signs put on the sides of the shop. So go and put the kettle on, grab your favourite snack and we'll get started. Okay, so what I'm actually going to use to create the images on the sides is a graphic as a stencil. So whereas when Matt did the name of the shop for me as a graphic, so a sticker, this is sort of the reverse of that. So I'll then be using the cutouts, just like a stencil, to sponge my paint into, to actually leave the image on the side of the shop. So the first thing I need to do is to measure the width of the shop, and then I can give that to Matt and he can use that for the size of the design. So it's 250 millimeters across. Now obviously the signs won't be as wide as that because I don't want them reaching sort of from wall to wall. So we probably want them to be, I don't know, probably around 180. So that then we've got a couple of inches or an inch and a half at each side. So I'll give him the overall measurement so he knows how wide he can go in total, but I'll say I'd like them about 180 wide. So what I've done here, very crudely, is just a rough design of what I want on each of the images. So on the one side we'll have the Honeychurch haberdashery, and I'm saying Honeychurch haberdashery because the shop is actually part of the Honeychurch range, so I thought that was really nice to use that. And a couple of cotton reels and some scissors there, and I'll see if Matt will be able to put that on, but if not it doesn't matter, we can just have the writing. And then on the other side, a place by the sea, fish and chips, and then a fish underneath there. And I'm sure he'll be able to do something with that. And I just want them to look really old and worn. So I'll just be really lightly sponging in the wording. And if you see these sort of painted signs on the side of old buildings, which are very rare now, some of them you can hardly read because they've worn off over the years, and that's sort of how I want it to look. Okay, so let me go and give these to Matt and see what he can come up with. So this is a program called Adobe Illustrator, and although I'm quite good with Adobe Photoshop, when it comes to Illustrator I really haven't got a clue because it's all very different. And this is actually more of a sort of publishing program, and Matt uses it for graphics and design and things like that. So what he's done here is both of the templates that he'll be creating, and he couldn't do the scissors because they wouldn't have cut out very well in the vinyl, but he's done here 3 cotton reels which I think look really nice. And then over here with the fish and chip shop sign, he's done a fish down there, and it might not come out as detailed as that, but it was just the sort of basic fish shape that I wanted. Now what he's actually going to do next is take these designs actually down into his own workshop where he can work on them, turn them into graphics and then print them off using his new graphics machine. Okay, so I'm down in Matt's workshop now, and here on the computer you can see the designs for the stencils, and he just had to redo the fish as it was a little bit too detailed, and once sort of cut out as a stencil you wouldn't be able to see any of the detail in that, and I think that looks really good on there. And this is a different program. This is called Flexi Sign Pro, and this actually works with the new machine which is here. So whereas before he had the little desktop one which was called a Craft Robo, this is more of an industrial type machine, and you can do bigger signage and everything on it, which is what Matt also does. And he's going to use it to cut out my stencils. But before we do that, I just want to do a little test. So this is the vinyl that Matt's going to be using, and when he's just cutting stencils, he just uses up any old vinyl that he's got left and that is perhaps a little bit old now, because we are just going to use this, like I say, as a stencil, just to dab the paint on, and then this bit will be discarded, so there's no point in using any of the best vinyl. So what I actually want to do now, I've got some of the brick paper here that's on the side of the shop, and I want to test the sort of stickiness of the vinyl against it, so that when I stick it against it to do my painting, it's not going to actually tear the paper. So what I'm going to do is just peel a bit of that back, if I can get it, like that. And then what I'm going to do is just dab that onto the front of my apron. And what happens then is just a little bit of the fabric sticks to the back of the sticky side of the vinyl, and then it's not going to be as sticky when I put it onto the side of the shop. So let's have a go with this. I've probably got far too much brick paper here, which blends in really nicely with Matt's work unit here. I'm going to stick that down quite hard, although when I come to actually do it on the side of the shop, I'll probably just use a bit of masking tape to attach that into place, rather than pressing it down like this. Now let's pull that up. Still being really careful. And that's fine, that hasn't damaged the brick at all. So I'm really happy for Matt to go ahead and cut the stencils from this vinyl. So let's do that now. So both of the graphics are now what's called weeded out. So all of the lettering and shapes have been taken out. And what Matt's doing now is adding some application tape. And this is really just what holds the stickers together. So it really is like just a big roll of very strong masking tape. It's got that same sort of texture to it. He's just pressing the tape nice and flat against the graphics using a plastic spreader. So there's the first one. And the second one. Okay, so I'm back in the craft room now, and I've got the shop here on my main work desk. And then what I've got here is a little bit of the natural calico emulsion paint. So I just used a spoon to dispense a little bit into there from my large tin, and that's just because I want to be able to dip the sponge in and get a minimal amount of paint on it. I've got my signs here, and then I've got a piece of kitchen towel here. So what I'm going to do is dip my sponge in and then dab the excess off onto the kitchen towel. And that's because I really do only want a small amount going onto the side of the building. Now, we do still obviously want to be able to read the wording, but I don't want to overdo it because I want it to have been there for you know, a couple of 100 years, and it's just one of those lovely faded old signs that you sometimes see on the edge of buildings. So I'm going to pop the camera onto the tripod now, and then we'll get started. So I'm going to start with the Honeychurch sign, and I'm going to have that on the right hand side of the shop. No particular reason. So I'm peeling off the backing. Being really careful there. And then, as I sort of tested down in Matt's workshop, I'm just going to dab this on the front of my apron, just to take away some of this stickiness. Like that. And then, I want it quite high up because the signs would have been high up so they could be seen sort of from, you know, the rest of the town. And I'm following that line along the brick there so I know I'm straight. Now I'm pushing it down, but I'm not sort of being too harsh with it, because obviously I don't want it taking off any of the brick, but I need it to be stuck there so that I can then dab my paint. And now I want to take off the application tape. So I started that side, but I'll come this way just so you can actually see what I'm doing. And with this tape you need to peel it back on itself, so not sort of pull it away, because it'll just pull the sticker off. And because that's not on there too tightly, it really will pull it off. So let's go back on it like that. Taking the O there. And that's the little A as well there coming out, the centre of the A. And that's why we had to do it this way, so that you can get all those little letters inside. If we just sort of cut it onto a non-sticky piece of paper without application tape, you know, there's nowhere for those little bits to sit. So that's sort of why we did it like this rather than just on a plain piece of paper. So just working my way along really slowly. Almost at the end now. I just lost the centre of the R there, so I've got to put that back in straight. And there. In this case it doesn't matter that there's sort of wrinkles in it, because obviously this piece is going to be discarded. I'll turn that around. Okay, let's start with a little bit of paint. Okay, so I'm just taking a small piece of sponge here and dipping it really lightly into the paint. I just push it on the side of the pot to sort of spread it across the sponge. And then I'm going to dab that onto my piece of kitchen towel just to get rid of that excess. So I'm practically sort of dry sponging it onto the template. And I'm just going to sort of get my pressure right on a piece of the vinyl there. And then see how lightly that's going onto the brick. And what I did do as well, although it doesn't matter about the wrinkles, I just went around each of the shapes and each of the letters just to make sure that the edges of the template were stuck down. Otherwise you'll sort of get a lot of bleed and all the shapes and letters will just look quite blurry. And I don't mind a little bit of that. So just starting with the cotton reels down here. And I'm just going to keep going with this piece of sponge rather than sort of dabbing it again. Right, so I've just topped up my sponge again, and again just dabbing it off now on the kitchen towel. And I'm going to have a dab on the clear vinyl again. Just because I think when you start, you tend to go a little bit heavier. So I've painting the E there, but I don't mind the odd letter being a bit more visible, because I think you do actually notice that when you see these old signs on the edge of buildings. Some of the letters are more recognisable than others. I'll come down here first because I don't just want it to sort of fade out as it goes along. We'll start working back on ourselves. There's no real sort of way of telling how it will look until we take the vinyl off, which is the fun bit. And even if we need to, we can use a paintbrush once the vinyl is off and touch some bits in if we need to. And I think, for fear of sort of now doing a little bit too much, that's okay. Now I'm going to leave the vinyl on there till the paint has completely dried. So I'm now going to sort of twist the shop around, and then I can do exactly the same thing again on the other side with my fish and chip shop sign. Okay, so starting on the second sign now, and I had a bit of a wrinkle in this corner which was pulling up the bottom of the fish, so I pulled the vinyl up to put it correct, and actually some of the brick paper did tear off. So we're going to have to do a little repair on that. And I won't be able to show you that until I've finished this side, but that's a shame. But I will be able to colour it back in. Actually, I might be able to just lift it and show because I didn't stick it all the way back down. And even though I stuck this again to my apron before sticking it onto the brick, I must have just pressed too hard down there and it's torn a bit up. So like I say, we'll colour that in once this has dried. We'll worry about that later. So just again going over gently in areas and more harshly in others to create that sort of worn random effect. I've got a new piece of sponge this time as well, just because the other one was a bit bunged up. So I was putting on a little bit too much paint. But it's quite an enjoyable process. I'm sure you've all done paint stenciling before in some form or other. I think it used to be quite popular for walls. I think back in the 90s or something, or early 2000s. It was like a very sort of modern home furnishing technique. Because that fish is quite a large area, I'm putting some darker paint just in the centre of that. Yeah, a little bit annoyed about that brick coming up, but I was sort of prepared for that really. I also putting stickers onto paper, that can happen. Okay, I was trying to use up what was on the sponge, but I'm going to have to put a little bit more paint on. Dab off as much as I can. I'll leave the top of that S quite clear of paint. I quite like the sort of random look of some of these lower words. Get the eye in there and the dot. Okay, so again I think I'll stop there rather than adding too much now. Leave this to dry and then we'll turn it around and take the other template off first and see how that's come out. Okay, so I'm back around the other side now. This is our Honeychurch sign, and I'm about to take the vinyl off. The paint is completely dry, which is the beauty of the emulsion. It dries really quickly. So let's go again from here. And now I just want to be extra careful taking this off. I think I was a little bit rough with it around the other side just because I thought it wasn't going to stick to the brick, and obviously it did. There's a little bit coming off there. So I'm just pushing that down with my nail. So I've pushed a little bit of that back with my nail, but again I've got a little bit of damage there. So I'm just pulling this off really slowly now. A tiny bit there I've just noticed as well. But it's looking quite good. The letters have come out quite well. Some little bits of vinyl that are still sticking, which I'll come through afterwards and remove with my scalpel blade. Yeah, so it might have just been where I sort of first started applying the vinyl and pressed it down a little bit too hard, where it's sort of attached itself to the paper. Because this side seems to be okay. Touch wood. Not to pull any more off. It's a shame because I'm really pleased with how the lettering looks. Don't be sort of tempted to pull really quickly as you get towards the end. There, so not too much damage, just that one piece there. I've salvaged a little bit of the paper, but again I'll touch the rest of that in. I'll get these little centre bits out with my scalpel. So I've removed all of the central vinyl, all of those little bits that were sticking, and I really do like how the lettering has come out. I am annoyed about these little tears, but what I'm going to do is stick down what I can, and then I'm going to mix some acrylic and dot that on there to cover up the tears. So that will be my next job, but first of all I want to get the vinyl off the other side of the shop. So I've mixed here on my palette some sort of browny, orangey, yellow ochre, all those sort of colours that make up the colours of the brick. And I've just mixed in some sort of browns and the ochre with a little bit of red just to get the base colour of the brick. And I'm going along really gently and just sort of dotting that on and leaving the gaps between the bricks. And what I'm doing now is just taking some of the lighter colour, so some of the white, just to tone down that darkness. And I really am just putting it on, I'll just get rid of a bit of that, really gently, just to match up with that sort of, you know, randomness of the bricks. Going over as well some of the sort of existing bricks that aren't damaged, and I'll just sort of build it up and get it to look as close as possible to the original colour. So I left the brown on the brush and then just dipped it into the white so you don't get a really sort of glaring white on there. And already that's not looking too bad. Obviously if you know it's there, you'll know it's there, if you know what I mean. But yeah, even looking sort of through on camera, that doesn't look too bad at all. Still a little bit more work to do on it, so I'll add in a few more colours. Just need to tone down a little bit more of that dark brown there. And it's really important if you're touching something up like this to leave the grout work, otherwise you're just going to be, you know, doing like one big sort of mark over the top of everything. You must sort of leave the detail in there. The best thing is obviously not to pull the paper off in the first place. But I feel a bit relieved now. I can see that that's going to work with the acrylic paint. And there are other little sort of paper scuffs around there. I'm not sure if you're going to pick them up on camera, but I don't actually mind those because it does just sort of look like damaged brick around the, you know, the sign. So I'll carry on with this, get it to look as close as I can, and then I'll turn around and do the other side. And then we're just about done. And there's that side done as well. And I'm really pleased with that, because that had a little bit of paper torn up as well, which I've stuck down just actually using the paint. So that's now drying back into place, but you really can't tell, so I'm pleased with that. And then I just put a few little strokes of acrylic onto the cotton reels, touched in the little holes in the top, and also I lost the little centres to the 8 on the vinyl that I pulled off, so I've just touched those in as well. That looks really good. If we sort of zoom back, see how sort of subtle it is. So you don't want it to stand out too much. I suppose if you're doing a shop sort of in that period, when sort of signs were first done on the sides of shops, then you might want it to look bright and colourful and new. But if you want something to look like it's been there for a while, then just a sort of one colour faded sign is the way to go. I really hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I'm really pleased with how the shop is looking now. I think that created a really nice effect on there. What I'm actually going to do now is take lots of photographs of the shop using my Nikon camera, so really good quality photographs, and I'm going to write a feature about the shop and try and get it featured in one of the Doll's House magazines. Now, I haven't spoken to any of the editors yet, so I'm not sure if it's something they would like, but hopefully they will, and I'll keep you updated on that. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody who sent over Christmas photographs of your dolls' houses and little Christmas scenes. There have been some really lovely ones, and I've already started editing those all together. Now, I'm filming this quite early, but when this goes out tomorrow, the 2nd of November, will be my birthday. Now, I'm not sure what Matt has got planned for me yet, but I will let you know in the next episode. I'm sure it will be something really lovely. We'll probably have a day out somewhere. So I'm really looking forward to that. Not so much looking forward to being another year older, but there's not a lot I can do about that. Okay, so that's it for today. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you again in the next one. Until then, take care. Bye!